Good morning, Endeavour, and a very happy Thursday to you. I am having a technological nightmare at the moment. It wouldn't let me video the second video yesterday, so I'm going to try today to video all the chapters that you need. Fingers crossed. Now, the first one that should have been yesterday is called The Green Sky, and we rejoin the story when Fred is about to have his flying lesson, explorer style. An hour later, Fred helped the explorer cut and pull down the vines, enough to roll the plane out of the stone shed and onto the boulevard of the ancient city. Fred climbed back into the front seat of the aeroplane and looked through the windshield. Seat padding was sprouting up from the holes in the black leather, but inside of the plane, it was spotlessly clean. "How's Max?" he asked. "Sleeping. Lila's keeping him cool with rainwater." "Is he going to be all right?" The explorer looked serious. "As long as you can get him to hospital in Manius soon. Yes, I hope so." "And if?" Fred began and stopped. "If not?" "No," said the explorer shortly. There was a muscle contorting in his jaw. It felt entirely wrong to be sitting here while across the stone boulevard Max struggled to breathe. The explorer must have seen Fred's rigid body, must have seen him shaking because his voice grew less curt. "He will live for now," he said, "but you must get him to a doctor, so concentrate." Fred bit down on his tongue and clenched his fists. He looked at the dials arranged in a row in front of him and at the joystick between his knees. Everything shone. There wasn't a speck of dust or greenery. "I clean the engine every day to keep the rust off, and I run it every now and then to check it's alive. Look after things you love, or else you don't deserve to love anything," said the explorer, swinging his bad leg in after his good one and settling in the back seat. "I think we heard the engine," said Fred. "Twice we thought it was an animal, a panther or a bear or a person roaring." "Possibly it could equally have been a panther. There are some in these parts." "Why do you hide it, though?" "For many reasons. Among others, this particular plane is readily identifiable. It's well known to belong to the man I once was, and for that reason I must ask that you set fire to it on arrival, if the impact on the ground hasn't already done so." Fred twisted round to stare at him in astonishment. Set fire to him? But the explorer was already pointing at the dials. "These are the things you need to know. Those dials are for speed and altitude, and that spirit level shows if you're flying straight. You want the bubble in the spirit level to be in the direct centre." Fred muttered the words after him, trying to force them into his memory. Speed, altitude, spirit level. The pedals bank left and right. Fred put his feet on the pedals. They were much smaller than the pedals in his father's Ford. He prodded them experimentally. Two wires running down each side of the inside of the plane shifted as he pressed the pedals. The joystick, the explorer shook the back seat joystick, goes up, down, left and right. Fred held the joystick. It was black with a red button on top, and it moved loosely under his fingers. "I have one too in the back seat, so I can take control at any time. This wrench, like a window winder, controls the throttle, meaning how much power you give yourself. And that's more or less it. Now, you see the button I told you not to press? The black one on the right?" It wasn't a button so much as an oblong, the lid of a fountain pen sticking out from the dashboard, it looked like. "Yes, press it." Fred pressed it. His hands were shaking. Nothing happened. "Again," said the explorer, and Fred pressed harder. The engine gave a moan, a cough, and then roared into action. The plane shook. Fred could feel it vibrating. It added to the wild prickling of his skin. "Do you hear that? That's the sound of life becoming," said the explorer. His eyes were glinting a little manically. Fred whispered under his breath, "Oh, help!" "Now, taking off is the easy part. You just point the plane in the direction you need to go, up through the hole in the canopy, open the throttle, pull back on the joystick and fly." Fred's breath had given up entirely now. "What about the rest of it?" He gestured at the dials. "I'll tell you when we're up there. We'll have to shout. If there's a wind, it'll be loud, and the intercom was one of the few things I couldn't fix. Luckily, we have no need of a radio control tower. Now, go." Fred's entire body was metal and stone. He had to force his feet to move, pressing the left pedal to point the plane above the boulevard runway. "Now, down, open the throttle," shouted the explorer over the scream of the engine. "How?" roared Fred. "Wind the winder at your left side." The plane gathered speed. The wheels jolted over the slabs of the ancient stone. "Pull back, pull back." Fred pulled back on the joystick with all his strength. He felt the nose lift, the front wheels leave the ground, his stomach jerk, and suddenly they were hurtling straight for the top of the canopy. The sky above him was crisscrossed with green. Fred let out a yell of fear, but the explorer pulled back further on his own joystick and the tail cleared the greenery of the jungle. "It would be a good idea to open your eyes," said the explorer. "It makes piloting easier." Fred opened his eyes. They were in the sky. "How did you know they were closed?" "Mine were the first time I launched a plane," said the explorer. The tinge of madness in his voice was still there. "You're flying." Fred looked down. The jungle was an infinite sweep of green, a Turkish carpet for a god. His heart was roaring louder than the wind ripping past his ears. The explorer leant forward and shouted in his ear, "Use the stick to turn left. You need to get the feel of the controls." Very gingerly, Fred tilted the stick. "More than that. You can be flying sideways without tipping the plane over. You need to feel that you can take risks." Fred pulled the joystick hard to the left. The wing dipped and the plane swooped in the air, and his stomach swooped with it. Less than that," yelled the explorer. A bird flew past them and the plane was heading straight towards it. "Don't hit any birds," roared the explorer. "It's bad for the propeller." Fred jerked the joystick and the plane tilted straight up, shuddering in sudden altitude. "What now? Shouldn't you be controlling it?" Fred's voice sounded panicky. "Of course not. Joystick a little forward," called the explorer, and the plane levelled out. Follow the tributary to the river. Before Fred had time to breathe, they were flying over treetops above an enormous flock of parrots. And then quite suddenly there was nothing between his feet and the Amazon River, except the air and a millimetre of tin floor. "Oh, good God," muttered Fred. The water below was a blue-purple. He could see the shadow of the plane skidding along its surface, and the explorer let out a noise that sounded like a growl, a guttural sigh. "It's beautiful. I'd forgotten." The river was staggering to look at, and it made every inch of Fred thrum and burn. It was very easy to not want to come down," said the explorer. "If planes didn't run out of fuel, I'd still be up here. It's the closest you'll ever come to being in a fairy tale. Now, if you feel you've got the controls, you can try flying through the cloud." Fred tightened his grip on the joystick. I don't think I want to do that." "You should know, it's important." "Can't I just keep doing this for now?" "No, up." Fred pulled back and steered the nose of the plane into the cloud. The air was bitterly, shockingly cold and wet, and suddenly the world, which had been so intricately detailed, no longer existed. "Keep going up and up," said the explorer. "Come out of the top of it." Fred pulled back on the stick and the nose of the plane rose. They flew up higher and higher into the blue. The joystick vibrated harder under his hand and he clutched, trying to stop it shaking. The explorer leant forward. "Lighter touch, Fred. I know I said to be firm with it, but you're holding it like a steak knife. Use the tips of your fingers. You gauge the wind by how the joystick shudders." Fred eased his grip and he felt the plane hum under his fingers. "Better," said the explorer. The wind dropped and the roar in Fred's ears lessened. He looked down at the green world beneath. "Are you sure we shouldn't be getting back to Max?" he asked. "The boy is safe for now," said the explorer. His voice was sharp. "I wouldn't be up here if there was anything I could do for him down there." "Sorry," said Fred. "He looks so like my boy." The explorer said suddenly, "Those eyebrows." Fred hesitated. "You said cholera?" "Happens a lot," said the explorer. He seemed to be trying to sound matter-of-fact, but his voice, it was tight. "Right, Endeavour, I'm going to stop there and join you for the next little bit in a while."